those items in the pouch in front of you.
Have a safe and informative journey.
Hello, I'm Nathan Hartman, and this is Dreamfinders, a podcast about the creative culture of Disney theme parks. For Scott Curtis, Disney fans hold a special place in his thoughts, mostly because they've, been in his head. As a child actor, Scott played both Bobby and the voice of Buzzy in Epcot's much-beloved Cranium command. After hearing of the theft of the Buzzy animatronic, Scott reached out to WDWNT, hoping to help spread the word and maybe get that little pilot back home. He was also kind enough to chat with me about his career guesting on shows like Newhart and the Golden Girls, being DJ Tanner's first kiss on Full House, and getting a chance to touch fingers with E.T. himself. All that and more is coming right up on Dreamfinders. Scott Curtis, welcome to Dreamfinders.
Nathan, thank you so much for having me, man. I'm honored to be here.
So you got in touch with us at WDWNT due to, of course, the kidnapping of Buzzy, which is a crime that sort of feels like a weird soap opera. And you would know about soap opera plots because you have some literal experience in soap operas, don't you?
I do. I wish I was contacting you under better circumstances.
Yeah.
Yes, I am a former child star. We say former because somehow that relieves some responsibility. My first gig was on a soap opera called Santa Barbara. And many of you may know someone that was on that show. Her name is Jenny. Robin Wright was on that show, and working with her was phenomenal. That was the first time. I was too young to have a crush, I think I was 7. But looking at her, you just went, uh-oh, she's different. What's going on here? Another soap opera I did was General Hospital. And I did General Hospital with Jason Marsden, who is the voice in a Goofy movie. Mm-hmm. What was of the son, Max? Yeah,
Max. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where I met him. We met on that show.
Oh, awesome.
So little Disney trivia there.
So what's it like working on a soap? I feel like people kind of forget that the grind of a soap is like every day there's a new episode during the weekday.
Yeah.
Did you, and of course there's sort of weird stipulations for child actors as well and how much they can be on set and things like that. Because of the scheduling, did it feel like you were working every day, or did they kind of block you in to do all your stuff in one day and then you were off, or how did it work for you?
Well, you are absolutely right. Soap opera, you get a script at the end of the day, and then you come back and you better know the next day's script. So as far as is it a grind? No, you're not roofing in July. You know what I mean? But yeah, when you like a sitcom or a movie, you're only filming a certain amount during a day. On a sitcom, you have an entire week to learn your lines, and then you typically performed in front of a live audience. The first day of a sitcom is you'd have the read through with the entire cast, and then you'd be done. So day number 1 would be maybe 2 or 3 hours, including the meal, and then Tuesday or the second day, third day, you kind of start going into things, start blocking. But as far as a soap opera, no, you're every single day you have a whole new script to memorize. So, but again, it wasn't a grind. And back then my memorization was pretty spot on. These days it's a little rough, but back then, and it becomes a family like anything else. Whether there's 12 to 15 people that are in the soap opera, we all get along great. And child actors, we have schooling every single day with a private tutor. And so it's mandatory 3 hours a day. And then, like you said, you're already on it, knowing that child actors back then could only work 8 hours a day. Mm.
So, and from at least according to IMDb, you were on for 67 episodes, which seems like a lot. But when you look at soap operas, and then also the fact that the show went on for years, if not decades. Almost decades. I think it's a very long. You look at it, and it seems like a very long sitcom. It has a history. So,
yeah, and sort of a sore subject. was the first Brandon DeMott who became Brandon Capwell.
Mm-hmm.
My agent, who I won't mention, he's famous though. But they decided that doing a low budget film would be to my advantage over staying on an absolutely steady gig. That movie was called, it was called Butterfly Revolution, and that didn't make sense, so they changed it to Summer Camp Nightmare.
Let's talk about Summer Camp Nightmare, because I find this, as someone who enjoys a good cheesy B movie, give people an idea of what Summer Camp Nightmare is. It's very like specific.
It's the A movie of B movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you play in Summer Camp Nightmare?
Well, I was a stuttering pee-pee pants boy who may have gotten molested by the camp counselor. Yeah, it. Again, why my agent thought that would be a good move is beyond me. But we went and did it, and for some reason, my mom and I we remember watching Santa Barbara, and there was a new young man who was my part, and that's how we found out that I was canceled. But yeah, Summer Camp Nightmare was a camp that was in, I want to say, Thousand Oaks, down in the Los Angeles area. And it was a lot of fun to film. But, it is what it is. Right. I guess it has some fans, but it was rough.
And I mean, I think this gets me to kind of a main point I should ask by now, which is like, how did you get into the entertainment industry? Like, was it something that, were your parents creatives in their own right, and then they sort of like they helped you flourish your own creativity, or did you just sort of recognize it as something you wanted to do by yourself? How did it come about?
It was a pure accident. I do not have stage parents, quote unquote. I'm a musician, have been my whole life, and in second grade, my first instrument was the accordion. My mom saw an ad for keyboard lessons, and we went down to the school, and the the teenagers, it was their class when we walked in, and they were doing Empire Strikes Back, like the theme from Star Wars, on like 20 accordions, and no matter what instrument, man, when you're 7 years old, 6 years old, and you hear that, you're hooked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in second grade, I was accompanying the piano player for a Christmas play. And, there was the professional piano player, and then this little second grader with this huge accordion playing. And being down in L.A., there was a girl that went to school that was already in the business. Her name was Allison Croft. Her mom contacted my mom with the agent's phone number. And she just thought, hey, if this kid can get up here and he's talented and, can do this in front of a crowd, he'd be perfect. So we contacted a manager who then we then found an agent and just started kind of going on auditions. And my mom was like, hey, Scott, this is something that you want to do. The only thing that I could think of was watching Ricky Schroeder on, I'm not even going to remember the name of that show right now. Oh, Silver Spoons, right? And him riding that train. They had a little train that you could ride around the house. And I was like, man, I want to do that. Heck yeah, let's do it. And then that's how it started. I went on interviews for 9 months, and we were basically going, okay, this ain't working. And that was when I landed Santa Barbara.
So after leaving the soap, you have a lot of, and we'll talk a little bit about some of these because they're fun, but one guest starring role you have on television that is fairly, I mean, some guest starring roles you sort of, you were in an episode of Golden Girls, but I think you were just like in a shot. I don't think like the main kid in that episode. I sort of breezed through it and watched it, but like there's moments like that. But you have an episode of Newhart where you're the titular Mitch, and Mitch is the name of the episode. This is a big enough role that like you're spending a lot of time interacting with Bob Newhart and Tom Poston, and of course the episode is directed by Dick Martin of Laugh-In fame. What do you have any memory of that experience? I mean, I think it's one of those things where as a kid you might not have been able to appreciate it the same way, but like
for sure.
Yeah, looking back, what's it like now?
Okay, so that episode of Newhart, when I auditioned. I got that part, and I also got a part on Webster. and they were
Okay.
going to film during the same week. And me being a kid, I wanted to do Webster, even though, again, it was going to be like another Golden Girls thing where, seen but not heard, like just above an extra. And my agent, who finally made the correct decision, had me do that. Who had me do that episode? Memories of it. I have distinct memories of the night that we filmed. Kind of fun. Peter Scolari invited me and my mom into his trailer and his dressing room. And a way that he would focus before the show is that he was a juggler. And so he taught me how to juggle, and the balls that he used were like really big, and I had really small hands. So like literally, I just did the best that I could, and I learned. And then before we filmed, he brought me out in front of the live studio audience, and I juggled in front of the crowd, and they went nuts. And I was like, okay, here we go. Working with Bob Newhart, I didn't really appreciate it. I was young. I didn't really. It was another job, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure.
When you're a kid, Bob Newhart, you go, who? I wanted to work with Webster.
Right.
Let's go.
And, of course, for those who don't know about Peter Scolari, he was, of course, from Booze and Buddies as well. And then for Disney fans, played Wayne Selinsky in the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids TV series. So a little info for those who don't know who Peter is off the top of their heads. Then in 88, I think it was 88, you come into another supporting part in TV in sort of what could have been like, I think everybody wants a long-running series, but Aaron's Way, which is really interesting. It's about an Amish family coming to California, running a winery. How did you feel like this was going to be your big break in this what ended up being, of course, like one season sort of show, but did you feel like there was a big opportunity here for you?
Absolutely. And first I just want to mention, man, how honored I am that you've done so much research, man.
I'm happy
that's
to.
great. Thank you. That's an honor.
I got to watch, I got to watch Bob Newhart and Golden Girls. I'm fine. So not a problem at all.
Right on. Yes, we really thought, it was on NBC, they had the 3 networks basically back then. This was before cable, before internet, obviously. And it was the slots, I believe it was 8:00 on, I want to say a Thursday night. So it was like in the perfect spot, working with Merlin Olsen, who was of the fearsome foursome of the Los Angeles Rams. So he was, very well known. He had done episodes of Little House on the Prairie. I want to say he was the father, and was it Father Knows Best?
I don't know about that one, but I know he was in Little House, and sort of, I think that's where they got this idea of him playing an Amishman would work out fairly well, because he was on Little House for quite a while, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And what a phenomenal man. He was, really, such an inspiration. Just a gentle giant, as if you will. We filmed the pilot. So in the show, we were Amish, and we moved out to San Francisco to help. In the story, I had a brother who died, and we went out to help his wife, who was running a vineyard, and she couldn't run it and have an infant child at the same time. So that's
a brother,
kind of the premise.
And a brother we should mention who had left the Amish culture. He was now what they would consider like a I don't know, I'm trying a Yankee or
a defect.
Yeah,
yeah. He went out to California to surf. So anyhow,
yeah, right.
So that's kind of the premise. Is we went out there, and there's a reason I'm starting there. But yeah, we did. When we did the pilot, we needed grapes to be in season, and when we did the pilot, it was in the wintertime here, and so we all packed up and went to Australia.
Oh wow,
that was really phenomenal. I'm still in touch with a kid that was an extra on there, named Johnny, and he'll probably be listening to this. So what's up, dude? Get here, man. He's supposed to come visit me soon. We did the pilot down there. And then the show got picked up, and that was phenomenal. That it got picked up. I thought that was going to be. It. We filmed, I want to say 12 more episodes, something in that area. But what happened is the show got picked up by NBC, from what I understand. And, who knows if it, by the time it gets to me, if it's the truth or not. But The writers they got into a conflict. One writer wanted to sort of civilize the Amish, quote unquote, civilize the Amish, have, the kids start wearing blue jeans and that kind of thing. The other writer wanted to keep us Amish. And, honestly, that was the charm of the show was, us being just from a completely different world. And, with creative people, when someone has a vision, when that vision changes, there goes all of your inspiration. And so the two writers parted ways, and there went the show. So that was really tough.
Did you know anything about Amish culture before you started the show? I mean, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Indiana. They were Amish on the roads. I've my entire childhood, I was used to it. But I imagine someone who's from California, right, in the middle of the entertainment industry, has little knowledge of Amish culture.
Dude, I'm from the San Fernando Valley, dude. Yeah, we weren't aware. We didn't have culture other than the Sherman Oaks Galleria, which is where they filmed Fast Times at Richmond High. I didn't know anything about Amish people. So it was, once I got the part, my mom and I started researching a little bit, and I'll tell you what, these days, what I wouldn't give to be Amish. Yeah, right. It seems like they haven't figured out.
Yeah, less Twitter. Yeah, less Twitter in Amish culture for sure. It's much better, much healthier.
Yeah.
So, of course, I think this is one of the greatest things. A great part about any child actor's career is if they get to play a child with special powers in a B kind of horror movie, and you got that. You went from playing the nerdy kid in a camp to Cameron's Closet, where you're the vestige of a demon at some point. Were you even allowed to watch horror movies at this time when you were in this film, or what was your experience with that process?
Yeah, I wasn't really into it and into horror films, and there were certain things in that movie that as we were filming, that I wasn't allowed to watch. Believe it or not, I don't know if you could tell, there wasn't a lot of budget for that film.
No, not really. But it's almost charming. Yeah.
That film, we made it in, it didn't even have a budget to be filmed on a quote unquote official movie lot. We filmed it in a Mercedes repair shop that it was changing owners or something, and the shop was empty, and that was where we filmed it, right by SIR practice studios in Hollywood. The demon there was created by the guy that did E.T., and I'm sure we're going to go there too. So that was kind of cool. The part had been cast for a different character. And much like Back to the Future, when they started filming, it wasn't working, and so they had canceled the filming with that young man, and then they brought me in. And again, we thought that was kind of gonna be a thing. We thought Cameron's Closet was gonna, go to that next level. And I think when it released, it was in one theater on Hollywood Boulevard, and I actually went with my stepfather to go see it. And so, a lot of work for it to go to VHS at that point.
But you did get to do a little bit of stunt work. At one point, you get thrown up on a ceiling and you're moving slowly towards the blades of a spinning fan, which the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I don't think a fan would hurt that much if you hit it. But I had a, B movie. Was this
how about if you put your head 2 feet from a ceiling fan?
Yeah, I don't want to do it necessarily, but it's a little suspension of disbelief.
That was a really cool part. The way that they did that was they built a recreation of the bedroom set inside of a huge cylinder, and they strapped the cameraman to the floor, and they just started to rotate the bedroom. So I was on the floor the entire time. It looks like it was a magnet system or something, but really, I was just on gravity was doing its thing, and the camera guy they had to convince the stunt coordinator to be the guy to film that, and so he was the one that was going upside down. Yeah,
that's interesting. Before we get into, of course, what a lot of people are here to chat about, which is, of course, Cranium Command and that sort of stuff, were there any other experiences, and of course we will later talk about Full House, don't get me wrong, I'm kind of going in chronological order here, any other experiences before Cranium Command that I've not talked about that would be wonderful for our audience to hear about?
Yeah, absolutely. The one that comes to mind is I'd said that that the gentleman that designed the
Yes.
demon in Cameron's Closet also did E.T. And probably one of my biggest things, and again, I guess this is kind of the story of my life. I was cast to be Elliot on the commercial when E.T. came out on VHS. So Pepsi had done a thing where VHS tapes back then were really expensive, and Pepsi did a thing where rebate, like if you bought the movie and then sent in a part of the 12-pack cardboard or whatever,
Right.
you would get money back on the film. And that was a phenomenal kind of a dream come true, even though you didn't know it was a dream experience. But in all things Scott Curtis, I guess, when Top Gun came out on VHS, Pepsi had done the same thing, and they filmed a Top Gun-ish, fighter pilot scene. And when it came out on VHS, they had put that commercial as the trailer for Top Gun. So that commercial played before the movie. Now, my mom and I, on a break, one of the producers or director came in and said, "Hey, have you seen the Top Gun movie? Because we're going to do that with this commercial. It's going to be before." And the way that it went down, I guess, was my agent. God damn it! My agent called us and said, "How dare you do a deal behind our back?" And we were, "What are you talking about?" And they felt that it took away all negotiating power on their side, but they thought that we had approved. My mom and I, when they told us, like, "Oh wow, that'd be great, cool," like that was the extent
Right.
of us negotiating it. And so the agent pulled it. The agent would not allow, and that would have made me a household name, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
But that was phenomenal, and that's when people when we talk about what I did in the past, that one definitely comes up.
Explain what you did in the commercial a little bit so people have an idea of was it sort of trailer shots connected and edited in with your footage, or how did it all sort of pan out? What was the commercial like?
So the commercial was basically E.T. was coming back. And I played Elliot. The scene opens, the commercial opens with me tossing a baseball to myself while I'm just sitting in my bed, and the baseball all of a sudden floats in midair. Then the flowers, like the movie, the flowers come back to life, and that's when it hits me. E.T.'s coming back. So my famous line was, "He's coming back," and I run to the window, and then all of a sudden here comes the spaceship, and and I go and do a little burnout on my bicycle right in front of the spaceship, and then I walk up, and you better believe I touched E.T.'s finger, and it lit up. So that was kind of it. Is E.T. is coming back, meaning here comes the VHS.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So I was Elliot.
Did having? I mean, you mentioned the finger. I assume the entire E.T. puppet was there as well on set, or was it just the hand, or
Yes.
what was that experience like? I think it's hard. I think now, especially when everything's just green screens, to get this idea of practical effects and puppetry in application and acting with it. Was it something that was there an experience for you while doing that?
Yeah, there was no green screen. I mean, they built the spaceship. They did it all, and they did it really well because they did not want me to meet who E.T. was before I saw E.T. because they wanted sort of and I wasn't allowed to see E.T. at all until that moment, and they wanted to capture the nostalgia factor of that. It turns out that E.T. was a little person. Her name was Margarita. And I remember when she had passed away years and years later. But man, seeing E.T. in real life, and then getting to touch the finger, again, one of those dreams that you didn't know was a dream. It was really cool. It was really cool. One of the highlights of my acting career.
So let's talk about another big old highlight, which of course is Cranium Command.
Yeah.
Tell me about how this all comes about. How was the audition just a normal audition you went for, and then they explained to you what it was? How did you end up with the part?
Yeah, again, being a kid, it's just another audition. The audition itself, knowing that Bobby was only going to be featured in, maybe 3 seconds of the entire thing, the actual, face of the 12-year-old boy, the director. So Cranium Command, I had a 6-foot-tall cameraman with a Panavision camera strapped to a Steadicam, and it had to be over my shoulder the entire time. And so with that, if I had ever bumped the camera with my shoulder or with my head, it would have meant a restart, and we would have had to start the scene over again. So what the director wanted to do was wanted me to perform certain tasks like tying my shoes, or like, it was so long ago, but let's just say like, do a puzzle or something. And he held the camera over my head, and he wanted to see that coordination. And I want to say that when I first got the part, that I wasn't even considered to be the voice of Buzzy at that point. And I think that as we got going, they saw, that I had the talent to do it. And I think that may have been the reason why the lobby or the pre-show Buzzy is a different person than the Buzzy in the theater. I think that's the reason why. Again, with Cranium Command, man, there was like no budget for it. So the way that they made it happen is just as remarkable as the ride itself.
Well, and not to mention, like, what's funny about the pre-show is you're in the pre-show, theoretically, because your face is, a screw top head that has to get a pilot in it. So it's interesting that you're in they knew that you needed to be in the pre-show, but they had, you're right, had somebody else voicing the character at that time.
Yeah.
I never thought about
that was kind of cool. That, if I remember correctly, when I was the screw top head, they had to do like a 3D image of me so that they could then animate it. And so I literally just sat on a stool while they ran a camera in a 360 around my head. So that was kind of cool.
Were you a Disney Parks loving kid at a young age? Had you been to Epcot Center before? Were you able to, when you knew, when they said, hey, this is going to be in the parks, did you have like a reference point for that?
So, of course, I was a Disney fan, but living on the West Coast, it was, all about Disneyland, not about you imposters out there. I had
so we've been told.
I had some 2 great aunts that lived in, they call it God's Waiting Room in Florida. And so my grandmother and I had gone out to visit. And when we were out there, we were going to go, they were going to take me to, the Magic Kingdom. But since I had already gone to Disneyland, they decided to take me to Epcot. And I don't know, what Epcot looks like, recently, but back then it was not a fun place for, I want to say I was, 8 or 9 years old.
Right.
Excuse me. So I just remember, I don't want to say bored. But basically there was nothing there for kids. And so knowing that this thing went to Epcot was not really a plus for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was my experience with it.
How was the show pitched to you once you were on board? Did they, they can't really, they can show you some storyboards, but they can't really, there's a script, but it's not the same thing as saying like, well, we're going to film it like this. You're in a theater in a child's head, and there's other actors that are going to come and get filmed doing other things. How did they sort of explain the process to you? Do you remember that? So
if I remember correctly, it was kind of a secretive thing. Like there wasn't a lot of talk about it. Leading up to the beginning of it. It was kind of hard to, like you just said, it was kind of hard to conceptualize because, a theater, we knew that you were going to be in a theater looking through eyeballs, eyeball screens, and they were going to be, my eyeballs, and the theater was going to be my head. So I think we knew that much. But like, leading up to it, again, I guess all things Scott Curtis, wasn't really aware of the grand scope of this at all. Had no idea.
When they did ask you to do the voice of Buzzy, did they have certain directions for the character, or did they sort of just let you play? Like, what were they hoping for in your vocal performance?
Yeah, just be yourself. When you do vocal work, which I didn't do much vocal work in my career, but you really got to kind of step it up and be a little over the top. and that was kind of hard for me to do. That's just not my personality back then. I mean, I guess it kind of is now, but back then, so doing vocal work, that was really like the only direction that I got from the director was, hey, pump this up, like you got to get a little bit more over the top. And I don't know if I quite accomplished that, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And we actually did the voice work on Disney Studios, in the vocal booth with, every time you see an actor, it was exactly what it looked like.
Did you ever get a chance, because of course several other bigger actors at the time, Charles Grodin, Bobcat Goldthwait, Dana Carvey, all these different people were filming other aspects of the attraction as well. Did you ever get a chance to go on set, see any of these segments? I did see a photo of you getting a chance to meet Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yes.
So did you have an opportunity for any other encounters with your fellow actors in this attraction?
Yeah, no.
That stinks.
Yeah. The girl, her name is Natalie Gregory, and she had just done ABC did a version of Alice in Wonderland, and it was a made-for-TV special, and she had just finished it, and so literally she was like a household name. And so I knew that I was going to be working with her, and I was excited about that. Not only because of that, but she was also, just such a pretty young gal. When we finished up, Saturday Night Live was like, at my age, I was just starting to get into it. Hans and Franz and the church lady, Dana Carvey, and obviously John Lovitz, and then watching Cheers, and George Wendt playing the stomach. But because I didn't get their script. Right. Until I was doing the voiceover. So I, really didn't understand that Hans and Franz were going to be dressed like Hans and Franz and, pumping the heart, as far as I, knew, maybe it was just going to be, their voice or something. But the director knew that I was a huge fan of Hans and Franz. And so Hans and Franz came in and they filmed their part, and the Bobcat came in, and the adrenal gland was after them, and they were both on the same day. So the director invited me to come and meet Hans and Franz, and of course, as they were finished and we're walking back towards towards their dressing room, I had to go, yeah, you guys did a very good job in that. And they're like, oh wow, they go, kid, you bet, and they're in full costume, kid, you better stop, you're going to put us out of business. I think that was Dana Carvey that said that, just being a good sport. And yeah, the picture that I sent was of that was Jason Marsden in that picture with me, the voice of Max. And I invited him down because he was a huge Disney guy, and so I invited him to come down and meet Bobcat Goldthwait and Hans and Franz, and so that's why we're in that picture together. And I think it was his photograph. So if it wasn't, like, that picture would not exist.
So eventually I assume you got an opportunity to see the Wonders of Life Pavilion. Did you get to go to the opening, or when did you get to a chance to experience? Did you get to No. Yeah. Did you experience the ride at all as a youngin after you had done it, or was it years later that you finally got down here to see it?
Years later. So when we finished, there was no way that they could create the theater. Again, the budget for it was really tiny, but they couldn't create the theater experience in Burbank. But what they had done is they had hung, a black cloth, a duvetine on the wall, and they had the eyeball screens, and they had it, the top and the bottom screen, and it was like a really bad mock-up. But that was when I got to, my mom and I got to go in and see, the experience of it, and kind of say, oh wow, okay, we see how all this is happening now. And then it went off to Epcot, and this was pre-internet. There it went, and that was kind of the last I heard of it. So now that the Buzzy is gone, seeing all of this reaction, because it was one of those things where it just left, and I had zero idea of how much it impacted people. My grandmother went shortly after it opened, and she told the people at the front gate who she was, and she could walk at the time, but they went and grabbed a wheelchair for her, and they like rolled her all. They put out the red carpet for her, and I'll be forever grateful that they did that. They put her right smack in the middle of the theater, and she was just so excited that she had gotten that kind of treatment, and I think that rules. When I was, I want to say when I was 20 years old, I'd worked for an airline, and part of the deal was I got to fly anywhere that they flew for $20 round trip. And a weekend came up, and I had a friend that worked there, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" Nothing. I said, "Let's go to Florida. Let's go to Epcot because I've never I want to see this ride." And he was older. He wasn't really into it. But he dropped me off in the parking lot, and I didn't want to make a big deal at all. I just kind of wanted to experience it for what it is, and I was blown away. So I didn't say who I was. I should have, but I didn't say who I was. I just went in and experienced it. I was mesmerized, and you could not wipe the smile off my face. But I'll tell you, it was not because it wasn't because it was my head and I was the voice of Buzzy. It was phenomenal. There was just no way that you could not have a smile on your face when you were in that theater. So I finally got it at that point.
So after Cranium Command, there's another thing you are known for, and that is the 2-episode stint on Full House where you played DJ Tanner's love interest, Kevin Gwynn. Why you're so remembered, of course, is because you're not only DJ's first kiss on the show, but you were Candace Cameron Bure's as well. Is that correct?
That's what I hear. Yeah, I didn't know that part. She comes from a pretty religious family, and so that it makes sense to me in hindsight. I had done episodes of Growing Pains, and so the Full House shows just kind of seemed natural because I had worked with Kirk Cameron from Growing Pains, and Candace, of course, is his sister. Yeah, that experience, that experience. I think it may have been my second kiss. You know what I mean? Like it was just getting going. You know what
First
I mean?
on film, at least.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But leading up to the whole week, we had talked about the process of filming a sitcom. Met on that first day, the table read, and I knew who she was, but I could kind of tell that we had made a connection. And so the entire week leading up to it was a lot of fun. She and I, kind of a funny thing is back then, that was when Banaka breath spray was a thing. Yeah. It's a breath spray that looks like it's in a chapstick tube. and kind of a funny thing was that she and I did is we would spray each other like in each other's mouth. Whatever you could do to kind of break the ice,
Right.
But the director and, the cast, Bob Saget, and, they thought it would be hilarious just to continue to tease her and tease her and tease her about the whole thing, almost to the point where I was uncomfortable, and the director would say, "Oh, we got that, but the lighting wasn't right. We need to do it. We need to do it again. We need to do it again." This is the dress rehearsals,
right.
And it was to the point where Candace was just turning red, and looking at it, from her perspective, and it's a lot of things that people don't consider about child actors is that they are doing this in front of millions and millions of people. She had to go through and a lot of child actors have to go through those rough, transition periods. But, not only was she getting her first kiss, in front of her mom and in front of, everybody that she knows, but she's doing it in front of millions of people. So, like when you think about that, how, it's pretty crazy. The second episode, I was brought back in, and of course that was the alcohol.
Yeah, classic. It's a kids get caught drinking episode.
Yeah, I mean, we were trying to, loosen up, man. It was Jeff Franklin after that episode said, "Hey, Scott, we're going to have you back, next week, and you're going to be doing heroin." Kind of a funny joke. but yeah, after we filmed that, Candace and I stayed in close touch. I mean, we weren't driving yet, so it was a telephone relationship, if you would. She and I would be on the phone a lot.
Oh.
So we had a blast. We connected. As far as how far 13-year-olds can connect, but
Right.
we appreciated the moment, and we had a great time.
So Full House sort of marks, I mean, at least on your IMDb, sort of one of your last acting gigs. Why did you decide to kind of leave that area of the business? Was it because you wanted to pursue music more, or was it just growing up and making different decisions?
So at that point, the auditions were getting more and more kids at that age, and at that time were starting to get into the business. And so auditions, just on pure numbers, expanded, but the amount of opportunities shrank because there was a much bigger pool. And my agent thought that it would be a good idea for me to start taking acting lessons. And so I did that. And it was all the characters, Leonardo DiCaprio and Jeremy Miller, who I was friends with, and a lot of the crew that we would see daily on auditions. And we started, they were doing like a lot of improv, and I just did not enjoy that. A lot of child actors get into it because they enjoy acting. I got into it because the opportunity was there and I was having a great time doing it. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So I was in high school, and I had a music teacher, Mr. Taguchi, who started in junior high, and he had continued all the way through my high school. And so I was really getting involved in music. I was a drummer. I was not drum major, but the drum captain. And I'd also played drums for Cal State Northridge. So I'd want to put myself in that position where I was now practicing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I had a high school football game Friday and a university football game Saturday night. So that was just kind of where my interests went. So the last show that I did was called Over My Dead Body. It was a detective kind of a show. And it was another great experience that I had, but I could kind of tell by that show that it was just something that acting was just something that I didn't want to do anymore.
So, of course, later on, we've mentioned this before, which was your love of music, and you were in bands, and you were playing in bands, and also doing some producing. What do you play, and are you still part of sort of the music creating community?
So I'm a drummer. The first instrument I played was accordion. Then in junior high, I was convinced to pick up the flute for whatever reason. But it was actually good because I got to learn, musical notes and not just the rhythms. But I was a drummer, and still am. After high school, and I'd worked for the airline, and I'd had the opportunity to talk to pilots on the phone when they would call in to book their reservations, and decided that I was going to go to flight school out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And this was when I was 20, 21 years old. The school that I went to basically went bankrupt. It's a whole long story. But I was the last one in my class that was trying to stick it out. And then I just said, you know what? I got into being a pilot because, growing up in acting, I really realized that I didn't like not knowing where my next job was going to be. And so I'd gone into flight school because I wanted a stable and steady career. And when it went bankrupt, I went, you know what? I'm going to go home and I'm going to play drums. That's what I want to do. And so that's what I did. My goal was to play the Sunset Strip eventually, and playing the Sunset Strip was actually the first gig that I had.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So this gets us back to Buzzy, which is the fact that he was, of course, stolen out of his I guess at that point we could consider it a tomb because it had been there so long, left sort of empty and isolated. When did you first hear about this crime? And I think it's a weird thing to sort of, I mean, I don't know if you would feel anything, but I imagine you would. It's like he's sort of a totem to something you did, and it's sort of like someone stealing. Like if you were in a movie and someone stole every copy of that movie, so no one else could enjoy it. Was it a feeling like that because it's such
right.
it's a one place sort of thing?
I never thought of it like that. We're like, it's a library. And when the library closes down, right, or a museum, hey, that's a great way to put it. So as internet, grew and grew, every once in a while I would just, check out my IMDb or check out, I'd Google my name every now and then. And, if you go to YouTube and you type my name, like there's commercials that I barely remember doing that, Domino's Pizza and, there's a Chevy Corsica commercial and a lot of things that I went, God, I barely remember doing these. And someone somewhere had, uploaded them. And of course I've downloaded them.
Yeah, right. They're like home movies.
Yeah. It's a part of my life. And so I was kind of keeping up with Cranium Command. I mean, it was closed down, so there wasn't a lot, to
right.
Check up on. But I had seen that there was this phenomenon going on of these kids that were breaking in and into the theater and like seeing it being used as storage.
Yeah.
But they would film themselves. I guess it's called urban exploring. Mm-hmm. And they were I saw Buzzy up there just all by himself. Still under the spotlight. So
yeah, creepily enough.
There was always hope, right?
Yeah.
But then I want to say 4 weeks ago, I had typed it in just to kind of see if there was any news going on about it. And there was a gal, her name is Jenny, and she had actually dressed up like Buzzy and did like a 45-minute video about how her boy was stolen, and she was so sad. And I watched all 45 minutes of it. I was glued. And that was when I started reaching out, to just a couple people, you guys being one of them, obviously, in hopes to just try to raise awareness if I can, do whatever I can to try to bring the boy home.
Yeah. Have you been surprised by the love for Buzzy in the Disney fan community? I mean, I imagine the more you dig in, the more there's fan art and all sorts of stuff. Is it being that you were in California, being that you weren't connected with, let's say, Epcot? Is it sort of a revelation to you that it's such a big deal?
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's been such. It's been really, not being out in Epcot and not knowing the scope or seeing the million people that have been through my head. I really had no idea that there were people that considered it a fan. Considered fans of it. I had a friend. And we used to go over to his place all the time, and he ended up getting a roommate. And the roommate, we were just talking one night, found out that I was a child actor, and we kind of got into what I was doing. And Cranium Command had come up in it, and he freaked out. He went, "What?" And I found out he's a budding animator, and he went in his bedroom and came out, and he had a Cranium Command T-shirt.
Aww.
And I went, "Whoa! Like they make merch for this? Like I had no idea." I went on and bought these Vinylmation characters, again, just like typing it in and finding out that they made action figures. So I own 3 of them. I bought 4 and I autographed 1 and sent it to my friend Ed, who was the guy that came out with the T-shirt.
Oh.
Yeah, I literally, it feels really special that something that I did was able to touch people in such a heartfelt and an amazing way like that. It feels really good because I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know the scope of it, and to see fan art and to see all these people doing cosplay and the reaction to try to find Buzzy, it's been overwhelming and exciting.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Scott. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast to talk to you.
My pleasure. Let's do what we can to find Buzzy. And, a thought that I had, and I don't know what form this would take, but Epcot owes me a trip out to Florida. And I want to say that if we find Buzzy, I would love to come out with my family, with my wife and my 2 kids. And I'd love to do a reunion of sorts. Again, I don't know how that would look, but count me in. I think that would be a lot of fun. So, hashtag find Buzzy. Let's find Buzzy. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate your time, man. So on behalf of Cranium Command, goodbye!
And that's it for this episode of Dreamfinders. Thanks so much to Scott Curtis for chatting with me. It was a real pleasure. Dreamfinders is edited by Shannon Mickelson. It's hosted and produced by yours truly, Nathan Hartman, who you can follow on Twitter at SomeStuffISaid. Our podcast artwork is provided by JP Tanner. Find his other work at tanwoodcreative.com. This podcast is distributed by WDW News Today, the worldwide leader in Disney Parks news. Read all they have to offer at WDWNT.com. Tell your friends about the show, and please give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Also, if you or someone else you know would make a great guest on this program, feel free to email us at dreamfinders@WDWNT.com. I'm Nathan Hartman, and remember, if we can dream it, then we can do it. Dreamfinders is sponsored by Never Grow Up Vacations, the official travel partner of WDWNT.com. Never Grow Up Vacations specializes in trips to Disney destinations around the world, so be like us and never grow up. Head over to nevergrowupvacations.com to book your next trip today.